Hi, welcome to Lesson 6 of City Vision University's Nonprofit Educational Program Design course. In this course, or in this lesson, we're going to be focusing on course design, syllabus design, and teaching methods. So Lesson 6, after you're done with this lesson, you should, and also relates to all the assignments, you should be able to evaluate and identify the best teaching methods to use in lessons that fit with your audience and learning outcomes. So we're going to start talking about a lot of the different teaching styles, because if you're going to create a syllabus and outline, you want to be able to integrate the different teaching styles and understand what they are. Then the second part is you're going to develop an educational program curriculum plan outline. So this is going to be multiple courses that support your educational program outcomes. And that's in your final project, part 5. Then you're going to develop a syllabus for a course following the best practices that support at least one of your educational program outcomes. So that's the final project, part 5. Again, a second part of that. Now, again, in the ADDIE model, we did analysis through weeks 1 and 4. And last week we did program level design, and this week we're doing course level design, and next week we're going to do lesson level, where we're actually doing development. Now, if you're going to develop a program design and a course design, you need to be thinking about how are you mixing different learning styles in there. So many people have heard this. It's called VARK. That often people will have different preferences in how they learn, saying I'm a visual learner, I'm an oral learner, I'm a kinesthetic, or I'm read writing. Now, there's some issues in how you understand this, because honestly, 98% of the average people misapply this. So I'm going to explain some of the importance of how do you apply this here in a minute. So the other thing, and this is much better researched than the VARK learning style, is the theory of multiple intelligence that comes from Howard Gardner. So you may have heard of emotional intelligence. A lot of that work came from his work. But what he said is that there are people who are music smart, body smart, people smart, word smart, logic smart, nature smart, self smart, interpersonal, self-awareness, and picture smart. And different people will learn differently. So these are kind of two different grids, and there's other supporting resources that will talk about this. Now, the question is, what do you do with this? The common knowledge that is basically broken and is not at all effective is you say, I'm going to teach to the learning style method. Now, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that typecasting students as only being able to learn in a particular way hurts their ability to learn. Really damaging, saying to a student that you can only learn visually, or you can only learn, through written words or things along those lines. Now, we recognize that there are these tendencies, right? But if you say to someone, and they've done studies on students, and they tell half the students that they're smart and the other half that they're not smart, and then the half that's smart does better and the half that's not smart does worse. So you kind of create this self-fulfilling prophecy whenever you typecast students. So I would not encourage you to do that. So the other problem with it is attempting to teach to a particular learning style for each student doesn't lead to better outcomes. The reality is, unless you're teaching one-to-one, it's basically impossible to do that. You're going to get some they're going to learn, one way, and some they're going to learn another way, and you're not going to be able to do that managing the diversity of students. So by only teaching to one learning style, it can keep that person from growing. And the third problem is, if you only teach one learning style, can keep that person from growing in their ability to learn in other ways. So you might say, I'm an oral learner. Well, that's great. Let's start with where people are, but they're going to get a job and they're going to have to be a written learner. And if you have said, we're not going to make them, read, then that's going to be a problem in a lot of jobs. So all of those reasons are reasons why teaching to a particular learning style exclusively is problematic. Now, granted, you might have students who are more hands-on, and you might want to try to do more hands-on activity. But what you don't want to do is tell a student you only learn hands-on, and or you only teach hands-on. So basically the overall philosophy is what's called multimodal learning. All the studies have shown this has superior outcomes. It teaches all students using multiple formats and modes to support the diverse learners. So an example might be teaching the same concept with reading, a presentation, a video, a discussion, and a hands-on exercise. So, we've had students that comment and they say, you know what, that video covered a lot of the same concepts as reading. Well, what we've learned is that most students are only going to retain 10 or 20% of what they read or watch, and it differs on who's going to retain what. So if you do both, one, we're covering both learning styles for students, and second is even if your primary learning style is written, it's going to reinforce it visually. And you might learn, 5% more doing that. So, that's really why we do what we do here at City Vision. And that's the philosophy. And part of it also is, if you always use your right hand, you're not going to grow in your left hand. So if someone prefers to only learn, through videos, we want them to read also, because that's going to strengthen their ability to learn in that way. So that's kind of our philosophy. So we try to combine reading, videos, and then we have discussion, forum, live meeting, a practical assignment, and engaging with the real world. And that's, we'll have half the students like one way and half the students that like the other. And overall, the end result is that students will, learn better by doing multiple modes and even learning in your non-preferred mode. And the other thing that's important to recognize in this last point is that online learning is inherently not very effective at particular types of learning, and we design with that in mind. So, for instance, we don't offer courses in surgery. If you ever went to a doctor and you asked him, how did you get your degree, and he's a surgeon or she's a surgeon, and he says, I got it entirely online, you probably should go to a different doctor, because you don't want a doctor that's how they learn, because surgery is learned hands-on, right? So there's certain types of things, that is really difficult. So just tying this back in with the course and just explaining the different weeks, I want to tie in kind of where we are. So, you start with the organizational mission, then you get the programs and outcomes, the program outcomes with the logic model and theory of change. So that's for the whole organization or for the larger holistic program. And then you're going to have educational program outcomes. That's what you did last week. And then this week, we're focused on course learning outcomes. So the idea is these learning outcomes, and then in week 7, you're going to do lesson learning outcomes. But these learning outcomes, whenever you write them, they need to tie together into the educational program learning outcomes and the overall program learning outcomes. So let me show an example of this from City Vision. So in our MBA program, we have our program learning outcome, this is kind of our catch-all specialization. Demonstrate professional competencies in a specialty area appropriate for managerial roles in private industry, public sector institutions, and non-for-profit agencies. So that's our program learning outcome. And then we have this course. So the course learning outcome number 2 is developing a detailed assessment of your client educational needs and plans and capabilities in the future. So that's what you did in week 2 of this course. And then in lesson 2 of this course, you had the lesson 2 learning outcomes. Now, what's important is to recognize that these two are lower level blooms, and this one is really the higher level blooms. So after you've done this last lesson learning outcome, that's going to show that you've achieved the course learning outcome 2. Now, course learning outcome 2 builds to course learning outcome 8, or 7 or 8, which basically is going to show that you can create an educational plan for an organization, which is showing a specialized skill that fits in. Now, then within the lessons, you have what's called a curriculum outcome map within the course outline in the syllabus. So if you look at our syllabus, then we have each week, and we have the number of hours that's listed, and then we tie it to the course learning outcome. So in week 2, that ties to course learning outcome 2. Now I get, for those of you who think like super logically and are, like math and like everything organized, you're going to get this. For others, just recognize it's a giant hierarchy, and you need to be able to demonstrate for each thing that it's making the higher level of the hierarchy work together. So that's the first part of this, which is talking about how you're going to have course level outcomes that will relate to your program level outcomes. So the other part is creating a curriculum plan or outline. So we provide some samples. This is St. Matthew's House, and these they call modules, but I would call these courses. And they have a 12-month program, and in each month they have different things that they're going to cover. And we actually have linked some of the syllabi that they're going to use for those modules. So in developing a coherent course outline, what you want to do is it's basically a way to organize the course. So what I showed you before was a course outline. So how long is it going to be? What are the learning outcomes? What's the subjects that's going to be covered, the types of students, and if you have assessments, what assessments. Now, something that's important, most of you won't care about having your courses evaluated for credit, but I do want to cover this for some of you who might want to have your courses evaluated for credit. So we had a partner, at Wheeler where they had a 1-year biblical counseling program, and they had already been teaching this program for a long time. But they decided they wanted their students to get credit, so they wrote up syllabi for all of their courses. And these are the things that you have to do to be able to get credit generally for City Vision to evaluate credit through a prior learning assessment process or through what's called our non-traditional credit evaluation process. And I'll provide a link to that in the course. But you need to be able, the biggest thing is you have to be able to estimate the total hours of activity in the class. So, you combine reading, your homework, your in-class time, any videos, and the idea is it's usually 40 to 45 hours of activity per credit hour. And then you also need to have some type of assessment. So say you do all that and you can say, here's how many hours they spent, but you never have them do any type of assessment. No test, no final paper, no journal. A journal in many cases will be enough. The easiest is to do a final paper. But you need to have them do something so that you're not just saying people sat in front of a TV and then they get credit for a college course. So now what a lot of organizations will do is they might have 30 clients going through a program, and then 5 of them say, you know what, I'd like to get credit for this. So they'll just give them an extra assignment. They'll say, you can write this final paper, and then you could potentially, get credit if through City Vision or another group. Now, the other thing you need to be able to do is it needs to appear similar to other courses. And I say that very loosely. And the main thing is you just need to have a syllabus with learning outcomes. So City Vision, we have a number of credit partners, and I can show you some of those here. So the Urban Ministry Institute, we grant 30 credits for a 1-year Bible school, very urban focused. University of the Nations is not credit. They're not accredited branch of YWAM. Wheeler, we gave credit for their work. Third Millennium's the largest free Bible school online. If you're familiar with the Genesis process, we provide credit for those. And for each of these, we kind of explain the details of how that works. Now, there's also program outlines that you can look at, to get an idea of what other groups have done in terms of their program outlines. And then you can also look at some sample syllabi that nonprofits have used. So this is the syllabi that Wheeler used that we were able to grant credit for. Now, if you look at how they did this, they tried to make it look like something academic. They gave it, even numbers, and they gave it titles that were more easily relatable to accredited courses. People like to be super creative in their titles and just create up, whatever they thought of. But if you're doing a survey of the New Testament, call it New Testament survey. Don't call it, something random that you just decided to come up with, because it's going to be harder to grant credit. They said that we have 48 hours in class, 96 hours of study. So that gets to 135 hours. So 3 credit hours. They have an overview, an outline, and then they have their learning objectives. So that's something that you can do. And then we also have something similar for St. Matthew's House, where they provided they provided their curriculum. Now, in this week, and one other thing just to show you, you can look at the syllabus for this course as a model, because you have an assignment, and why don't I actually jump to the assignment and then I'll come back. So your assignment this week, there's two parts of it. The first part is to do the educational program curriculum plan or outline. So this basically would be your list of courses and what they're going to cover. So, that's what this is. That's also what, we showed before, all the different courses that St. Matthew's House would cover. And the idea is you want to be able to tie back your courses to your program outcomes, your educational program outcomes. So if you do something on, financial learning or financial education, then what does that program outcome does that support? And then the second part, we're going to have you do a course syllabus. So write a course description and then course outcomes. And we're having you focus on the cognitive learning and the affective learning. And then we want you to be able to tie it back to the educational program outcomes. If you have required books, what those are, if there's other material. And then the biggest part is going to be the outline. Now, I listed 8 weeks. You can go and you can add rows. I think if you highlight a whole row in here and then you right click, you can go to insert rows if you want to add rows. If you have a schedule, you could say, this meets on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for, 1 hour. And then this time estimate is just estimated total time in class and out of class. That would be so you get credit. And then if you have any learning assessments, exams, written journals, or papers, what will they be? Do you want to get outside credit recognition? And, if you do plan to do that, you can kind of look at some examples of that we provided of how to do that. And then, the last part would be potential supporting materials for your course. So up here, you're listing, like a book, but this would be if you want to get DVDs or other articles, doing a deeper dive. And then, this is providing a little bit more detail on your assessments and evaluation strategy. So if you say after this course, students are going to know how to do financial management, well, how will you know that they know how to do financial management? That's the key part of that. And the difference between this here, this is going into more detail, might be, half a page or something, whereas this might be, 2 or 3 lines. So hopefully this is helpful. Now, if you wanted an example, this is City Visions. So we have our course description, we have our course objectives, and each of these, tie down here into the course outcomes. And you can see each course outcome is tied to a week. And then we have program outcomes, and we explain which of the program outcomes this relates to. We have the required text, and this shows our total hours. And then we have a lot of other things that accreditors require, in this. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions, please ask your faculty member.